there's a birthday brings up like, you know, birth and the beginnings of things, right? And so what would the world, I always think, what would the world be like without this person? You know, like what impact have they had on the world? And that's how I think of birthday is like, wow, in a parallel universe, this person may not have existed. And you very well couldn't have, based on your story. Yeah. You know, like, so I was always a person looking at efficiency. I think my Mars is in Virgo or something. So it's like, you know, hyper anal. And so what's the single most important area, health area to start first? Is the query tonight. What's the single most important health area to start first? So if the camera can't hear you guys, then I'll repeat. So what do you guys think? If you're starting your health journey or you're telling somebody to start their health journey, because there's one word that comes down to, and Monica knows it after all this time. Yeah. The butt? Microbiome. The gut? The gut. Good. Good. That's a very good place to start. There's no wrong answer, by the way. Okay. There's many ways.
Start with the feet. The feet. That's the bottom. You want to work from the bottom and work your way up. You get your toenails done. Deep, right? Yeah.
Sure, I can see the feet.
No wrong answer. There's no wrong answer.
Well, think about this with feet. I had biomechanics classes, so think about your feet. They should, in yoga, there's the rear of the foot and the two poles here. So in standing mountain pose, I had a teacher that said, you want your tripod not too much on the inside of the foot, not too much on the outside, not too much on the front, not too much on the back. Why? Because if your ankle is just a little bit skewed, then the knee's a little skewed, and then the hip's a little skewed, and then the shoulder's a little skewed, and then the neck's a little skewed, and we call it scoliosis. But it starts in the feet. Wow. The tiniest little imbalance in the feet can affect all the way up to the neck and the head. And I've seen this through 30 years of body work. So I'm very anal about when somebody gets on the table, do they have a long leg? Most people do. It's not because their leg is longer, because their hip is slightly tilted. And so that hip tilt tells me how they're torqued. Every one of us is torqued one way or the other, and one leg's longer than the other, generally. And that's from the feet often. Walking wrong, bad shoes too. Like I had a girlfriend got, you know, those shoes are like wetsuit booties. They were the big rage a few years ago with the little toe things in them. Oh, yeah. Remember those? Yeah. Yeah. And she read some book about some African runner about how running in bare feet is so good for you and running in shoes is so horrible for you. And I got to thinking, I was like, you know, there's a point to that actually. These Nike Airs with these big air cushion, you're not grounded on the earth. Not at all. So it's this disconnection from the earth. Oh, buy your Nike Airs and fly above the earth and ruin the Schumann resonance and don't ground your energy into the earth. You know, no grounding involved here because you're on this foam pad this high above the earth, you know. And so I was like, that's a big reason for our back problems. Well, this is another one. How about Birkenstock? This is another one. Because when you're sitting like this all day, the bowling ball is being held up by these muscles, hence the upper back tension. And then the pelvis doesn't have good lymph circulation. And you all know we're talking about the portal vein so many times. I saw this guy the other night. His gut was out to here. And he wasn't fat. But his gut was literally out to here. He was like my build. I'm like, oh, there's portal vein stagnation. I wish I could have got a photograph of it. Like, there's portal vein stagnation right there. So there's no psoas. There's no front muscle energy. It's all over strong here and tight and weak here. And then so these muscles on the front attach to the front of the spine. The psoas attaches the hips to the front of the spine. So if you don't work these muscles, and these are overworked, they pinch the spine, and then we get intervertebral disc popping out. Muscles in the back too strong, muscles in the front too weak. You see, they pinch the back, and the front opens up, and then the disc pops out. That's why I say there's 3 important movements every day. You do this, get yourself set up where you're leaning back on the heels more. That works the lymph here. You do this every day. And some other movement like just jumping, and that's enough to get your energy back. These ladies know it in the groups. The natural law group are just doing 3 breathing exercises that take less than 5 minutes. And that's why I call them 3-minute miracles on my YouTube channel. Because in less than 5 minutes, you can get yourself back to a high state of chi and clarity. Well, that's actually kind of a hint. So the gut's a good place to start, yes, with health.
How about the endocrine system?
The endocrine system is another great place to start. Now, why would the endocrine system be a good place to start?
Because it controls everything else.
That's right. You guys think about it. If your thermostat in your house doesn't work well, the heater's never going to work well, is it? So the brain gets signals from the ovaries, the testicles, the thyroid, the pancreas, the adrenals, the breast in some cases. Yeah, the mammary glands, as they're put in endocrine system, they're endocrine producing organs, they're hormone producing organs, you know. The fat cells in the gut have a relationship with the brain. You don't talk about leptin, you know, Leptin. You don't hear about leptin a lot, but people that have leptin problems means they're always hungry. It's related to insulin. When insulin goes up, leptin levels tend to not work so well. So the endocrine system, there's a teacher that I mentioned to the group that I work with. His name's Stuart White out of Texas. And he has no less than a 6-month waiting list to see him. And he starts every single person on either blackcurrant seed oil or wheat germ oil. And the endocrine product from Standard Process, where it's pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, and either the gonad, either the testicle or the ovary.
What's it called?
Simplex F or M is the name of the product. I sell it. And so that gets the endocrine system working. And so his theory is that if you get the control centers working, then everything else falls into place. The gut is also another place to start. So these aren't wrong answers, because my version, well, I don't want to give the answer away yet. So there's another part to the endocrine system. The endocrine system is hormone fluid, signals moving through the fluids. We call those hormones, right? But there's another signaling system in the body, and what's that? It's electrical. What's that? The nervous system. So there's one electrical signaling system and one water-based signaling system. That's one simple way to think of it. And what happens is when an electrical impulse is just kind of like, we see it as like a one-way, right? We send the signal from point A to point B, right? Rough way of, you know. Oh, I got a question. I was in Ace Hardware the other day. So voltage times amps equals watts. Is that how that works? Okay, I did get it right. I'm trying to remember from electrical class in high school, you know, what was that formula? Was it voltage? It was watts? It's all those formulas, you know. But I couldn't explain amps or voltage or watts anymore myself. Could you?
Yeah.
Okay, can you explain it? Because I want to know.
Okay. It's a while since I've done it. So amps is to do with, so like if you think about it as like electricity going down a wire, you know, if you think about it as like a hose pipe, analogous to a hose pipe. Okay. So the thickness of the hose pipe determines the amps, that determines the force or the amount of water going down. Okay. And then the volts is the pressure in which it goes down. And then the, what was the other? Volts,
the watts.
Watts. So watts is about the amount of work that water does when it, you know, how many times it spins the thing you're irrigating or something. You know?
So your oven's like a 1,000-watt oven, right? For example, right? So right. That means it takes 120 volts times whatever, 8 amps to make the 1,000 watts, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So if you have a thin wire and you put a lot of power through it, it's going to melt.
Yeah.
The body works the same way, right? So the body works the same way. You put too much current through a nervous system that can't handle it. In other words, the divine force, people blow out.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
People take ginseng when they're like 20, you know?
Right. It happened to me. I took it when I was 25 and Michael Tier was like, don't do it. Don't do it. And I'm like, my skin turned like dandruffy in like fucking hour. It's too much fire.
Turn it off.
Like red, this is red Korean ginseng, right? Red ginseng?
Red ginseng, yeah, that's hot, yeah.
So in China, in the old, more conservative ways, they would give you Romania and yin tonics to build you up. And then they give you the ginseng after what, months of the yin?
Yeah, depending on how yin position you are, yeah.
So they don't just give you fire, right? Because remember the analogy of yin and yang in my world is log is the yin and yang is the fire. And if you're yin deficient, it means you got no log, which means you got no fire. So how do you rebuild the log? It's a 4-letter word. How do you rebuild the log? Rest. That's the only way. There's no formula. You just got to rest, see? But what Americans don't do, rest.
Keep going.
Well, it's kind of unfair too. In Europe, what's the average yearly vacation? 6 weeks, 8 weeks in Europe?
Yeah.
6 weeks a year? What do Americans get? 2. Maybe.
If they're lucky, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're broke.
Yeah, and then you're broke after a vacation, right? So
we're broke too.
So you see, my point is that if you're put on the treadmill from kindergarten You're trained in the treadmill, right? It's a great propaganda system. You're trained in the treadmill to get up early, go sit in a seat, be a compliant slave, right? So that's what we're waking up from. See, I woke up from this when I was in the corporate world from age 20 to age 25. I worked at IBM over the hill. I worked at Unisys in LA. I worked at JCPenney here in the Capitola Mall, which is now Macy's. And then when I finished my corporate world, age 25, I said, I'm never going back. And I never did because I knew it was evil. My bosses were teaching me to sell things people didn't want.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, this isn't ethical. I did well because I was a shoe department manager at JCPenney. And I saw the need for people to have good shoes, and JCPenney was selling them. So it's like, it's better than, remember Payless Shoe Source? Those are the worst shoes. So uncomfortable, and I'd rather the cheap Payless Shoe Source shoes.
Oh, they don't want you to want to help you when you go there.
No, they don't.
I think in the past, I think the last one closed down in Scotts Valley.
Did it really? Yeah. Oh, they deserved it.
Wow.
So a lot of us never got that ticket because then you get somebody pregnant when you're out of high school, and then you're in the 9-to-5 grind, and you never get your head above water to see above the swamp. You're in. It's so, people say the system's broken. No, it's not broken. Carlin nailed it. It's designed perfectly for those in control. It's not broken. From our perspective, it appears to be, but no, it's not broken. So here we are, we've woken up out of the spell, a lot of us, right? That was the value of COVID. Like, it just pulled the veil out for a lot of us. Like, what? And now here we are with the most important health area to start. So we have nervous and endocrine system, we have gut. What else? Think very simply. Think very simply. What's the most important health area to start first?
Sleep.
Oh, that's great. I've told the sleep story before. A client came in for a 21-day cleanse. His whole family, I called him Saint Rod, and he did the blood pressure check lying down and standing up, and it was falling 25. He was a big Bear Claw coffee guy, Los Gatos workout chiropractor. So I was like, your cleanse is a sleep cleanse. And he did the best of anybody. He actually bought a couch for his office because his business was maintaining all the ATMs in the Bay Area. Oh, not a stressful job at all. Not very stressful. I mean, you get phone calls and red lights all over the Bay Area, triage, ATM triage.
Wow.
Right. So he did very well. And so that case, sleep for him worked well. And, I hadn't thought about that one, but do you feel clearer after a good night's sleep or not? Probably clearer after a good night's sleep. Right?
Feel energized.
Energized, right. I hadn't thought about that. Sleep is so important, actually, that when I've had medical doctors recommend sleep meds for some people, I actually say yes in some cases, that you should probably do that because you have I tell people, if you're on a drug, blood pressure, anything, because sometimes blood pressure meds are necessary to save someone's life, because if they blow a gasket, their blood pressure is too high, they could blow a gasket, which is eyeballs, kidney, you don't want them to blow a gasket. They've got strong gaskets, sure. I mean, I had a lady, she was 210 over 150 for blood pressure. She didn't want to be medicated. And I'm like, you are going to die. And like, so I had so many ironic blood pressure cases, and she wouldn't give up wheat. I said, look, if you just give up the wheat, it's going to drop 30 points. And she didn't believe me. And then she finally, after months she bought hundreds of dollars of supplements, popcorn, tried everything, didn't budget. And I go, you are making the same stupid decision over and over again. Just drop the wheat for a week, just not forever, and then find out. She dropped the wheat for a week, came in for a blood pressure check, and it dropped 30 points.
Wow.
To 180 over 110, which is almost manageable. But even then I was scared for her, so she didn't go on meds, and she dropped out because she didn't want to do the work. And that's what happens with clients of mine. That's a great one, sleep. Oh my God, we can say a lot about sleep. What kind of sleep though? Do we want to have 3 a.m. to noon sleep or 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. sleep?
Second one.
Yeah.
3 a.m. to noon.
Speaking very personally.
Well, you asked me what we want.
Right.
That's what I want.
That's why you're just being honest,
Good question, Frank.
Huh?
What do we need? What will work best?
Yeah, what will work
What helps?
best?
What helps?
So there's a circadian rhythm, Ben. And the circadian rhythm, I mean, you can't beat natural law. That's why I teach a natural law class. This is irrefutable. And you look at it as long as I have. if you don't go to bed at 10 or 11, the body is purifying the blood from 10 or 11 p.m. until roughly 3 a.m. They call it liver gallbladder time in Chinese medicine. What really is happening is the liver and the spleen are taking in the blood, purifying it, and then spitting it back out. Purification factories. And you can just imagine, you know, that if you're awake and eating at that time, chronically, you end up with impure blood. You're never going to get anywhere with impure blood. You're never getting anywhere with impure blood. Does it make sense that in the natural cycle of things, you go through a cleanup process, your body does? That's what dreaming is to me. Dreaming is emotional cleanup, emotional and psychic cleanup, the part of ourselves making sense of things that are senseless. You know, that's what dreams are. And so it's a emotional and psychic poop in a way. That's what dreams are. They're emotional, psychic poop.
I think it's more than that.
I view poop as a resource. I don't view poop as waste. I view poop as a resource. So
I had this beautiful dream of you, girl. It was some emotional psychic poop.
Right. You know? It's not a flattering word, but it's sort of the end of the process, right? I mean, I call all the watersheds that end up in the ocean the rectum of the earth.
No.
Because it is. All the watersheds converge into the ocean. And that's the rectum of the earth, unfortunately, but that's true.
And very unhealthy for surfers right after a rain, right?
Yeah, well, yes, it is. That's very bad. That's very bad earth bowel movement out there. That's right. I've experienced that many times. So, okay, back to the subject at hand. Most important thing later to health start first. We have sleep, gut, endocrine nerve. I kind of gave away the answer, actually.
You probably think diet because you're a dietitian, right?
No, I don't, actually.
Okay.
In some cases, no, I had a Polish macrobiotic teacher, 71 years old, in 1996, tell me that. She goes, you're too diet oriented. She goes, what about your breathing? That's way more of your chi than your diet. And I was like, oh, fuck, she's right. Right? I was like, God, you got me. And she goes, diet, here's her quote, diet is maybe 1/7 of your chi. I was like, wow, just laid me out straight, you know. She was 71, I couldn't refute her, you know. She would do these workouts at 7 a.m. with like 30 of us. I was prime of my life, age 31, and she was kicking our butt, not even getting any sweat. We're all like, how is she doing that? She's 71 years old, you know. She was one of the most kick-ass ladies I've ever met.
71 is not that old.
Well, I was 31. So when you're 31, a 71-year-old is like an antique, you know. Now I'm 56. I'm like 71's like, if I make it that long, I'm God, great.
Our perspective team.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ages in this room, you know. So, but seeing that and getting inspired by, wow, this woman is 71 years old, and she is walking her talk. And she said something that really shook me up because I was eating sweets a lot. And she said, you Americans, in my family in Poland, you got a cake or something flour product on your birthday and Christmas and Easter, and that's it. Because you Americans with your flour products every day or weekly, because you're so spoiled. You have no idea what we in the backcountry, you know, it was like, you know, like honey is also, you know, like when the bear finds honey, that's why they go psycho, because you don't find honey hives, you know, flying around. So carbohydrate was much more appreciated, you know, by our ancestors. And I was having a discussion the other day about white sugar. It went back further than even I thought, but they knew about white sugar and they only had it in the apothecaries up to only less than 150 years ago, I think, in Britain. Like they wouldn't give white sugar out of the apothecary because they knew how addictive it was. They knew this.
Wow, so it was a controlled substance.
It gets better. Remember, I told you guys about Harvey Wiley, 1905, the Pure Food and Drug Act. All white flour and white sugar was supposed to have a cancer-causing label on it in 1906. The law was never enforced because big industry took it down. And then they fired Wiley, and then he wrote a book about it in 1920, and the book was burned and banned from libraries. Kind of sounds similar to what's going on now, doesn't it?
Wow.
So they just buried all of it. So yeah, white sugar, white flour was well known to cause cancer, all kinds of bad stuff. And they knew it and shoved it through.
They knew it that long ago?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a book that talks about this called Sugar Blues, written by William Duffy. And that book was recommended to me when I was suicidal at age 20. I had a college professor at Cabrillo, he was an English professor, and it was Mr. Haddis or something. He changed my life because he just normalized my suicidal ideations. He said, what's your diet like? And I, you know, it was like top ramen and potatoes and rice and way carved out.
There's more top ramen.
Yeah.
Way carved out. Way carved out. And he said, you're bipolar. You're eating too much sugar. Read this book, Sugar Blues. And then I was mortified to realize my situation, that I was addicted to this thing that I had no control over. And that started my journey of about 10 years to get off sugar. It took me 10 years to beat that alcoholism. I call it carboholism.
Yeah, right.
And I wrote a blog years ago called Confessions of an Ex-Carbaholic. Confessions of an Ex-Carbaholic. And then I just laid it out for people like, here's what I struggled with. And if you're in that deep, now, and one of my assistants is sending in articles now, mainstream NCBI, NHA articles about how our decisions are being made by our gut bugs in mainstream studies now. We were talking about this, remember?
Yeah.
So mainstream studies are now saying the same thing we've been saying for 20 to 25 years. I've been saying it for a long time. And it's like modern science comes full circle where it sees the woo-woo, right? Okay, most important health area to start first, back to the.
I gotta go back to my topic then too, because certainly hydration has its place. It's really interesting, and we're basically covering at least 7 areas, like you said, all these approaches. But if we will figure out how to get more hydrated in any which way, and there's 50 ways, we'll get over a lot of symptoms. So that's another one.
It's excellent.
We are
And
water beings.
if you're watching this video, we've been messing around with the hydrogen machine, which of course my house blew up my power supply and my expanded water machine. So he's sending me, George Wiseman sending me a brand new unit. That's how great this guy is. Wow. And how into his products he is. So yeah, I just love this guy. So hydrogen, hydrate. Is hydrogen in the water, the H2O, the hydrating part of the water? I would say yes, right? Hydrogen, hydrate. So is hydrogen the hydrating element? I gotta look this one up. But it can also be made into a bomb, right? So it's a very reactive element, but the word hydrogen and the hydrate got me thinking like, are they related in some way?
Right. And it makes the water taste really wet and really, really absorbable. Yeah. And I had to send my machine back to them too.
It's so weird.
Yeah, you just told me that. I told him too.
George, we still love you. You're awesome. And so, yes, that is correct too. So we're talking about, it's like we're out on the surface of the ocean still. The area I'm pointing at is a little deeper and more simple. What's the word in health area to start first?
Was that a clue you just said? Was it salt then?
I know, I'm trying to.
I mean, you could argue breath could be, but
yeah, breath is super important.
Bernie and I were talking about it earlier, actually.
How about your mental health?
Okay, right. So nervous system, endocrine system is part of which health foundation that Craig's developed? Out of the 4, there's 4 health foundations. So the nervous and endocrine system is part of, I'm so glad you're getting this, Monica, because you.
Well, I'm just trying to see because of that, what I remember that detox versus rebuilding. And if nervous and endocrine are part of 2, then I would think the health foundation.
2 is digestion and the biome. Yeah. And then, so you're getting close. I love being a teacher because I was on the other side of this struggling for so many years. Remember when you had the Chinese medical teacher talk about the 5 elements and the control elements and the feeding elements and the mother cycle? And I'm like, just awestruck. You're like, oh, I got like 20 years ahead of me on this stuff, So think about it. There's that one word beginning with a D. Discernment.
Door.
Discernment. Door. Welcome. Welcome over the top. It's being recorded. It's being recorded, so we gotta just keep going here. So D, door. That was a good D and door.
Distraction.
I said the word earlier. You want your endocrine and nervous systems drive this.
No.
What about your drive, your sex drive, your...
So I'm going to have to say it. I love watching you guys. So your chooser needs to be discerning.
Discerning, that's the word you're going for. So I was trying to go with what Katie was saying to see if I could give a clue about mental, what you're mind has to do with your health. And that's what I was trying to see if we could get the word chooser out of anybody, because that's what it is. I thought you were going for that mostly, and
chooser,
therefore
right.
discernment, yes.
Then, so the other part of the health foundation one is the choices you make determine your primary hormone levels, which are determined through insulin. So your glucose, fat, protein ratios, Barry Sears wrote a book called The Zone years ago about this. You want to be in your zone. I know my zone is high fat, high protein, unfortunately. My vegan guy died years ago. It was really unfortunate for him. But, you know, the brown rice guy died because I felt like shit and I had candida problems. And I was like, I can't do carbs. As much as I tried even last week, I had a slice of sourdough bread, the best from the Miller's bakery, you know, the Miller's farm, and woke up in the morning with a terrible migraine headache, like what I call a suicide headache. It's like, can't do that anymore. Okay. So the chooser, think about it. If you don't have clear discernment of your perception and consciousness, are you ever going to make clear decisions about your food? No.
About anything.
Never. Because you're going to be running from trigger and instinct and craving and temptation, which can be neutral if we're clear, right? Temptations are great, you know. I like a nice temptation myself. I don't mind a little polarity, you know, but not when they're driving my life. Like I told you, I struggled for years. And I started to develop what I call the negative association with them. Like when I stopped fast food, my last fast food meal was a ridiculous overeat and a vomit in the morning. It was Taco Bell, and I told some of you the story. It's like, and then, so now when I think fast food, I think vomit and horrible stomach pain. So I'm never gonna eat fast food again. It's been 30 years. If somebody wants to get off coffee, just drink so much coffee till you're like shaking, and then you'll never want coffee again, you know? There was a big debate. I had a colleague that posted.
Same with hard drugs as well.
Probably not. Disclaimer. Disclaimer. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. You can always count on Ben for the out the box
I was going to
question.
do 17 lines. Apple juice.
So here's how deep the delusion goes, folks. Here's how deep the delusion goes. On Facebook, I'm in a bunch of professional colleague circles, and one of my colleagues is posting another one of these studies about the microbiome being helped by coffee. And it's not done in a real gut, it's in vitro. They give coffee into this fake gut, and then they measure the probiotics in the fake gut, and it's just a manipulated study. And so she's all proud of, look at me, I'm drinking my coffee and helping my microbiome too. And, oh, you know, Craigie went in there and I just destroyed her. I was like, I'm sorry, honey, but caffeine's a well-known insecticide. And you can't rationalize your coffee drinking. Sure, some people can metabolize caffeine quite easily, like my brother can have a cup of coffee and go right to bed. Oh my God.
What's the role with the coffee with the Gerson therapy then?
Thank you for that. I'll mention that in a second. So coffee, like for some people, they metabolize the caffeine very quickly, and that's a liver thing again. Your liver is like this guy behind a counter, and you have all these things it has to do metabolically. And so if you overload it with too much, then for me, for example, this is the basis of schizophrenia. If you don't metabolize your stress hormone well, which some people don't, then it turns into this intermediate metabolite that's similar to adrenochrome, actually, but it's a negative form of adrenochrome. And George Goodhart was helping schizophrenics with high-dose niacin. So it turns out niacin helps the body process stress hormone more efficiently. I've had a few schizophrenic clients, and I tried the high-dose niacin, mixed results, but it's promising, yeah.
You mean cortisol neutralizes cortisol?
No, the intermediate step of the adrenaline. Adrenaline and epinephrine are the fast. That's what happens when you get a scare. And then they go up and down really fast. And then cortisol comes in as a backup to keep the body rolling along with the pain. It's cortisol. So like if you hurt yourself and you have a reaction like that, then you want your liver to break down these hormones instantly. But is that happening in today's world? No. We call it estrogen dominance in women. There's so many circulating hormone-like things going around. The liver just has this take a number system so long, and the symptoms we see and feel is that overload in the liver. So the most important health area to start first is to make sure that you're making clear decisions. Because if you're not, you'll never be healthy. Never. Because you're in the same stuck addiction. I've got a bunch of clients right now, and generally I just send them off to psychotherapy. It's like, you've got to get this addiction under control. So what's the fastest way to beat an addiction, you guys think?
Cold turkey.
That's good, but how? There's a way to do it cold turkey.
You do something different, like the opposite thing you do for 40 days in a row.
Right, there's a habit thing. Like some people say 3 weeks, some people say 4 weeks, some people say 40 days. I found if you get a full moon cycle, which is 28 days, you do it, it's a good habit changer. You stop cold turkey, but there's something, do you leave a void? You can't leave a void.
You have to find a substitute.
You have to find a substitute and fill it in. My way of doing it was I started replacing when I had sugar cravings, I just put protein in my mouth.
I like to identify what the comfort is that's coming from the addiction.
There you go.
Or the supposed comfort or the needs. And then it's easier to find the replacement that won't be negative, might at least be neutral, but could possibly even be positive. Because it's amazing how comforts are skewed.
Like Snickers bar, right? I used to crave Snickers bars. So then I sat down and thought about it. Like, okay, they're crunchy, they're chocolatey, they're creamy, peanutty, nougaty, sweet. So it's like, what can we make that satisfies all that? So I used to buy the natural dark chocolate nut clusters and the Staff of Life, and that they had the caramel in it. And it was like, it's definitely a step up from Snickers, but is it really something I want to be eating? No. Then I went to Toll House cookies after that, the natural version of Toll House cookies. And oh boy, that was dangerous. Because you can't eat more like a couple of those. And it's like 8 or 9 or 10. Yeah.
I used to have a thing where when I found I was eating too much chocolate, I would go, okay, I'd start at 70, I'd say, okay, and the next bar is going to be 75%, cocoa. And then I'd go to 80 and 82. And then I found at World Market, you could get 99%.
99?
Yeah. And
wow.
So I would just eat that. And so you wouldn't be craving it anymore. No. You'd be realizing it wasn't the chocolate you were craving, it was the sugar,
Yeah.
Right. Wait, I think.
Why use hydration? Liquid.
You hydrate because you're craving yin.
Yep.
So when you eat too much salt, you crave sugar or yin. When you crave too much sugar or yin, you crave yang, which is salt or meat. It's a teeter-totter that I've been playing with my entire practice. It's a sodium-potassium teeter-totter.
But I think Satori's also referring to the fact that a lot of the time we think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty.
Yeah. Great point.
And so if we will develop the habit of seeing whether water satiates the hunger, we can usually learn it does.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I'm rushing through really fast. I'm sorry.
Oh, just really quick, I was going to say, when we're craving chocolate, we actually have magnesium deficiency. And most people do because it's needed for like 350 biochemical reactions in the body.
I'll go into it right now. So there's this slide, this whiteboard. So let's go into that. So this is cell metabolism stuff. And why magnesium is actually important is because it's at the center of every single energy reaction in the body, the cell level, the mitochondria, and it controls oxygen and iron. So does copper. So the fastest way to get magnesium is leafy greens, green juice, because it's at the center of the chlorophyll molecule. It's one of those mysteries of life. Hemoglobin, identical to chlorophyll. Magnesium is the center of chlorophyll, iron the center of hemoglobin. So you want to build your blood, you do greens, and that's back to the Gershon thing. So Gershon was recommending a lot of, colon therapy. So coffee up this end has a different reaction in the body than this end. It's inflammatory this end it's anti-inflammatory. I know from thousands of coffee enemas personally. So no one can tell me they don't work because I've done 1,000 of them. And I did one yesterday and it knocked my headache out. And nurses used to do them in hospitals. So no one's going to tell me, I got students that are getting hassled by their scientific friends about how dangerous enemas are. Shut up until you do it. I tell people, just shut up. You have no idea. You're going from hearsay and propaganda and rhetoric. They tried to kill Gershon twice.
We're talking about Max Gershon.
Yeah. They tried to poison him twice. First time didn't fail. Second time they did. And then his daughter took over. Harry Hoxsey, Dr. Beeler, Royal Lee, Bernard Jensen. You're all heroes because you stood up to the fucking FDA and the USDA. And I believe the F word is appropriate. Yeah. These are demons running our lives and we have to call them out. So I went that route because I knew I had to find out for myself. I was never someone to take anyone's word for anything, including enlightenment. I went and sat in my ass in silent retreats for 15 years to see what the hell enlightenment was. And until you're willing to say my life isn't worth anything until I figured what this thing is, I was never going to be on my deathbed with regrets. And that's another starting point, right? Start with is what's the most important thing to me right now, right? What's my wish in health? Not my complaint. That's negative. What's my wish in health? And if we're not wishing for a better chooser, we're not making the right wish, especially when we're in an addictive pattern. Did Cindy leave? She did sneak out, didn't she?
She did. She snuck out.
She told me she was going to, so at least she told me ahead of time. Yeah.
I have the funnest little anecdote about, I figured out that year after year, I'd go through phases where I really wanted to eat sweets at night.
Yeah.
And even if I only ate a little bit, it was like, ugh, I could tell I was disrupting and I didn't always eat a little bit. And I finally wrote a note to my ancestors and named all the family members that taught me how to eat sweets at night. Okay, I need your help. You know that you partly died from doing that. And I don't want that shit anymore. Help me, be my willpower. And oh my God, within a week, I had lesser cravings. And I leave it there. I read it every night as I'm going to bed and every morning as I wake up. And I have almost no cravings for sweets late at night. Like I will still have sweet teeth and I will still eat sweets when I can. But that was really fun. Try it. Think about who taught you. Alive. Talk to their soul and say, I'm done with this shit. Help me get out of it. Nails are thin.
You have to ask for help.
Yeah.
And to add to that, then I just put it on the camera. You can't see this. I was in the middle of something Monica was speaking of, because I was in a massage, heavy massage practice, getting off work at 9:30 at night, semi-single, working on beautiful women, coming home going, oh man, I'm just lit up. I'm lit up. I'm going to eat myself back to this lower state of living I'm used to. And so I was eating chocolate too much. It was when I could tolerate chocolate. I was eating it every night and getting the endorphins and, watching Seinfeld and smoking pot and those are the days. And no responsibilities other than go massage people and shut up afterwards. So I had to digress slightly on this future self veto thing. I'd read a book, a cheesy meditation book called Mystical Experiences in 30 Days. And I had a meditation every day for 30 days. And one of them was you go on a vacation. And then I knew I was going to San Luis Obispo for a week. And it says you imagine yourself coming home a week later. And you ask your future self, hey, how'd the vacation go? Driving back the other way. So that's kind of a cool concept, So I was calling it Future Craig, hey, Future Craig, how's the trip going to go? And, avoid this over here. Like, wow. So then this was years earlier, and I'm laying in bed in the morning going, hangover, pot, sugar, caffeine, chocolate hangover. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is morning guy. And I think, there's two guys here. There's night guy, and then there's morning guy. And night guy is fucking over morning guy. And I'm like, so what's really happening here is morning guy's pissed off at night guy. So I realized at night, I have to say, hey, morning guy, do you veto this decision? And then I call it future self veto. So you ask your future self, is this okay? And then let the future self decide. I think it's the same thing as the ancestors, because, it's the same idea.
We are our own ancestors.
Right, in a sense. So sure. Does that make sense? I have a video about it on my YouTube channel. It's just ask yourself and feel, don't think for the answer. That wrong answer up here. This is the great storyteller, the master of duality, demonic at times, stuck in, polarity, makes up problems when there aren't any. Ego. Well, that's the ego's job. It solves problems. And if there aren't any, it makes problems up. So be proud of itself. It's a function, you don't do a sculpture with a hammer. It's the wrong tool. And the ego has certain things it's good at. You leave it to that, but the nature of the universe is not one of them.
So your chooser gets the benefit of you projecting into the future self to make a better choice in that moment.
You guys get that. Yeah, you guys get that, right? Because then you can feel so I started to feel the morning guy pain at night. And so it got less and less and less. And so I wake up in the morning going, this is how I should feel when I wake up. Because I used to be a morning kid, and then I didn't like not being a morning guy, because when the whole morning goes by, that's the biggest source of grief. It's noon, you're out of bed, like, fuck, I missed the sunrise and, all the things of nature and the transition into sunlight. And so that's a good place to stop. So the way to get there then is you can work on hydration and sleep, but you've got to have balanced blood sugar to sleep well too. So I got a bunch of blood sugar protocols, and I go back to the single product that I use is Cataplex GTF. So it's a liver, adrenal, pancreas product from Standard Process.
Can you take that at night?
all day.
All day.
You want to focus on the morning is the most important decisions for night. If you don't eat enough in the morning, you eat too much at night. So I tell people you got to have a huge breakfast, because that's when your digestive system is most active, is in the morning up until about 1 p.m. It's at its least active in the evening.
What's the name of the product again? Cataplex?
GTF, short for glucose tolerance factor. I sell it here at the house because you weren't privy to this, but blood sugar variations affect the adrenals. So, so you've got liver, adrenal, pancreas as the triad in blood sugar. And a lot of adrenal fatigue is nothing more than reactive hypoglycemia. And, because there isn't really an alarm when it goes too high so much. It's more of an alarm when it goes low, because that's when the adrenaline comes out, because the adrenaline raises the blood sugar up in an emergency. But when it's too high, I've seen people above 1,000, where 80 to 90 is like the fasting level. Do you think that their system isn't dry as a bone with all that sugar in their blood? That's like dry skin central, and lots of peeing. That's why people pee a lot, because the body's trying to dilute that sugar. If you turn into a yeast factory, if you stayed that way, think about it. You have flies all over you. I used to have flies all over me when I had sugar problems. The other thing is what Monica said, as far as the discerning chooser, is to ask ourselves, what is it we're really trying to get? And I don't know how many times the ladies would say, "You're such a sweet guy." And I was addicted to sweets. And I'm like, maybe I should be sweet to myself. Not eat sweets, but do sweet things for myself. And that changed it for me, was that realization. Like, I just need to do self-massage and go get massage and do more vacations. And that's how I created the better world for myself. It's like just not being a freaking martyr. Because when you care, it's easy to blow yourself out. I think everybody in this room understands that. When you overgive, you shrivel up like a raisin. I don't want to be a psychic raisin. I've been there. I was earlier today, actually. Went and surfed, and you fill back up. Like, oh, there's like the sun. Well, there was no sun today, actually, unfortunately.
But you did something sweet for yourself.
It was something sweet.
Ocean.
Me and the salty ocean was doing something sweet.
Yeah.
Ironically. I told Chevalisa, my friend, she said she wanted to help support me today. I said, I don't need any counseling today. I just need to jump in the great mother. I've been surfing for 40 years, and she's always there. Because the ocean takes everything, doesn't it? It takes everything. Actually, I was on mushrooms years ago, and I was having this mushroom experience down in LA, and it was really strange. And so I had this vision of, it was this, anyways, I probably shouldn't go into it, but it's so hard to explain an experience. It's so multifaceted to a group. So we're going to move on to, it's 8:45. Thanks for watching, folks. We're going to turn this off because we're going to go into Monica's 60th birthday and tell a few health inspiring stories, because that's what she wanted. Get to know each other. Thank you very much.
Yay.